Welcome back, Pontiac High School. Today's lesson is part one of a lesson on foreign affairs and national security, where we're really going to look at the State Department. All right. So, for American foreign policy, includes every interaction with other countries. Every time we interact with them, it could be little interactions with Canada, just at the border, little things here, or it can be blowing somebody up. It's all foreign policy. Economics, diplomacy, military actions. It's all tied into foreign policy. And in all of these policy areas, it's the president of the United States who's really in charge. They're the most responsible person, and they guide the United States through all foreign policy things. Wow, it's a big job. He must need a lot of help. That's why he has the State Department. All right, so let's look at some trends in American foreign policy. The founders of our country, George Washington, etc., wanted to limit America's involvement with other countries. He just thought it was a bad idea to get too involved in other nations' business. The U.S. simply wasn't powerful enough. They weren't as powerful as France, Britain, and Spain, the other big players at the time. And it was feared that the United States would be taken advantage of, that we would go into any interaction with a weak hand, everybody would know it, and therefore they would take advantage of us. So better just not to play the game. Stay out of the business. However, that's just not been possible, especially since World War II. When the United States came through World War II relatively unscathed, whereas Europe was pretty much blown up, as was Asia, the United States had a strong economy, strong military, and the original reasons for isolationism ceased to exist. The United States was now a leader in international affairs and a mighty, mighty, mighty nation. So, how do we use our tools of foreign policy? Well, one, just keep in mind this all comes through the president. The president is wielding these tools. And his most important tools are located in two cabinet departments. The State Department, our focus today, and the Department of Defense, our focus next time. Now, in peaceful times, it's the State Department that they really focus on and really lean on. Department of Defense doesn't do as much, except for during times of war, although it certainly does do a lot. It's just compared to the State Department, it's not as important. So we're going to dig into our State Department today. The State Department is led by somebody known as the Secretary of State. And this contains the president's chief advisors on all non-military issues of foreign policy. So trade and partnerships, alliances, all of these things can be run through the State Department. Most American presidents consider this to be the most important of their cabinet departments. The Secretary of State is one of the most important people in the United States. They have tremendous power and tremendous say, particularly as the United States gets involved in other people's business. So let's look at the Secretary of State. Well, the Secretary of State is one of the most influential members of government. The State Department has to be further broken up, though. It's too big of a job for one person. So it is broken up into global regions, including the Department for Africa, for the Near East, for South Asia, which are all led by different bureau chiefs. But the Secretary of State has overall authority. So they are the bosses of these folk and others. And they report to the Secretary of State, who then reports to the President. But only the President and the Senate have authority over the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State wants to do something, and the President doesn't stop them, then they can do it, unless the Senate says no. The Senate has some authority too. Pesky Senate. Foreign Service. The American Foreign Service. State Department employees stationed in other countries are members of the American Foreign Service. This includes about 6,000 people. That would be people who work at embassies and people who work at consulates throughout the world. There are about 6,000 people who do these jobs. Now, the right of legation allows the United States to send them into other countries in order to advocate for American interests. That's something called the right of legation. That basically says nations have the right to send representatives to other countries. So we have ambassadors and their staffs from other countries, and they have ambassadors and their staffs from ours. Now, these ambassadors, who are they? Well, ambassadors are the heads of U.S. embassies. And a U.S. embassy is an official American office within a foreign country. The ambassadors are responsible for maintaining contact with the foreign governments. So if we want to reach out to, say, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, we would first go to our ambassador, and our ambassador, it's his job to know how to get a hold of the UK Prime Minister whenever he needs to. Or the counterpart in the UK, which would be their foreign secretary. Special diplomats are ambassadors to non-national groups. So sometimes we might have these special diplomats go out and, say, meet with the Palestinian Authority, which is not a government organization, but they are kind of the government for a region and in charge of a group of people. Wouldn't be an ambassador, but it would be a special diplomat. They can go to these organizations, meetings, summits, and they basically carry the same rank as an ambassador, but they don't have that title. Diplomatic immunity. This is a fun one. Every country can set laws within its own borders, and any visitor has to follow those laws except ambassadors. If you are an ambassador, you are immune from the laws of the nation that you are in. That is, you don't have to follow their laws. You don't have to do it. Ambassadors can just break the law. That sign says no parking. Ha! I'm an ambassador. I'm going to park there. This is diplomatic immunity. It's a good thing to have. High-ranking members of foreign service are granted this immunity from foreign laws. They can't be sued. They can't be charged with committing a crime. They're totally immune from all this. However, you can't abuse this because you can be expelled from the country for that. If the ambassador from France were to come over to the United States and become the leading drug trafficker in America, well, gee, that's not cool. We're going to kick them out of the country. They can't stay in our country if they're going to be committing these crimes. But otherwise, they do have diplomatic immunity. Kind of cool. All right, so this was our State Department. First look at foreign affairs and national security. Next time, we're going to look at the Department of Defense. Thank you for joining me today, and farewell.